Morning, Lagos.
Fantastic. All right. So Nwaji is at the corporate MC on Twitter. Mr. C has changed his handle finally. So it's DMeStar. That's DMRCEE. Still a bit technical. And then Tunde Okufi is at Bigos on Twitter. On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981.
I like your new handle, Mr. C. Sounds like a registration number now. More legit.
Thank you.
On WhatsApp on
Yes, please send messages on WhatsApp 0809444091. That is the WhatsApp number for messages only. 0809444091.
On YouTube, we're streaming live, so please go on there. Use the live chat option to send us a message, and we'll be glad to read. Okay, so let's move on to our first headline here from the Punch newspaper. Nwaji, I'll start with you. Reps OK compulsory genotype test for intending couples. So just a brief background. Did you know that Nigeria has the largest population of people with sickle cell disease in the world? And this is data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Also that Africans have had the disease for the last 12,000 years, yet not much has been done. Also note that it's preventable. But Nwaji, please take us to the story.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, y'all trying to get me going this this Friday morning. First and foremost, being a sickler is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
And I just want to clearly, categorically state that. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people do live with this disease, and they do live into ripe old age. It's just certain things you have to do to manage yourself when you have this particular disease. Now, why our legislators, for some reason, feel that they need to extend oversight towards compulsory testing for intending couples is completely irresponsible, senseless, and also reckless. I think what you're doing is creating a situation regarding what you stipulate should be the law and what should not. Two people making a decision to marry is literally their decision. If any individual decides not to disclose certain things about themselves, whether it's you're a sickler, whether you have heart issues, whether you are a homosexual or anything else, it's really nobody's business. It is between that couple and how they decide to engage with the nature of their relationship. Why a legislative body feel that they have the right to now begin to stipulate what people do makes absolutely no sense. I just don't understand, and this is my issue with our government in Nigeria with regards to the extent of their powers regarding what they feel they need to do. They are mixing up morality with information. So what you can actually do, or what you should do, is what C and I were talking about earlier, is that you can create awareness campaigns to say, look, there's nothing shameful about being a sickler. Disclose this information. You can create campaigns, and you can now state that, okay, fine, if you want to get married, it's important that you have that conversation with your intending spouse, so that way they're fully aware these are the different things that you can do. That is your responsibility, is to inform the public and then now sensitize people towards this information so that people can now feel that it's okay to come out and disclose that information. But to stipulate it from a legal point of view, that
so I just want to point out that people, so they're not saying that if they're found to be ASAS or that they shouldn't get married, they'll then be, the information is used to counsel the intending couple.
I understand, but this is
making it compulsory. Is infringing on your rights. It's like saying it's compulsory if you do not brush your teeth in the morning with a certain toothpaste. Maybe saying the specific toothpaste is the extremity, but if you say you must brush your teeth in the morning, else you'll be arrested.
So
what if I don't want to brush my teeth because of health issues?
You can accomplish your task without making it a law.
Okay.
You can sensitize people, you can engage, you can inform, you can now
do urge,
campaigns,
you can encourage,
but you do not mandate. That is not, we are in a democratic system. Well, I would like to believe we're in a democratic society. I mean, the whole bunch of things are showing that we're clearly not. But you cannot do this. It's just not right. It is constitutionally wrong.
All right.
Okay, so whilst I agree with Nwaji, quick point, it's not yet law. It's just the House of Reps.
Yeah, but the fact that
Senate
getting there is ridiculous.
Yes, I agree. But the Senate is yet to also this move. So until it does that and it is sent to the president for his assent, it's not yet law.
All right, thanks for clarifying that, Mr. C. I'll stay with you for the next story then. Okay. Court dismisses Busola's case against COZA pastor. Now, we followed, when the news broke, we talked about it here, and this is just a judgment that has been passed by the Federal High Court sitting in Buhari, Abuja, as they dismissed the case filed by Mrs. Busola Dakolo, who is a popular photographer and also known as musician Tim Dakolo's wife, who came against the Commonwealth of Zion Assembly pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo, that he allegedly raped her when she was a teenager many years ago. Can you please take us to the story?
Okay, so first of all, there's no federal high court to worry. So this is the high court of the Federal Capital Territory.
All right. Well, this
So
news
the
report
story,
says
so the report is misleading.
okay.
Now, Busola is a lady who accused the head pastor of COZA of allegedly raping her years back, and she filed a civil action against him whilst the police investigation is still ongoing. Now, I understand not from this report, I've been following the story, that his lawyers filed a preliminary objection, and that preliminary objection was sustained, and the court held that the suit was, reading the words of the judge, was her statements were false and they were made to embarrass, scandalize, and ridicule the senior pastor himself, Atoyibo. Now, she's indicated
and it was purely sentimental.
it was
and
purely
empty.
sentimental. Now, this is a civil action, and the burden, the odds of her succeeding in this case were always very high because the crime itself had not yet been established. No court of competent jurisdiction had determined that Mr. Fatoyinbo was guilty of the allegations. If the criminal proceedings had been started and concluded before the civil action was done, then she would have had a greater chance of success, because when this person is found guilty, you then institute a civil action. Basically, what you're doing is you take the judgment of the criminal court, you bring it to the civil court and say he's already been found guilty, just award damages.
But I think they did realize that they'd gone out of the statute of the law, so they knew there was no point pursuing a criminal case against him.
Now, with regards to that point, I'm not sure the judge understands what he's doing, because in Nigeria, with regards to criminal offenses, there's no limitation period.
There's no statute of
Oh,
limitation.
we don't have statute of
For
limitations.
criminal actions,
Even
you
for
don't.
rape cases.
Nope.
No, we
Criminal
don't.
actions
Wow.
generally.
We don't
It's
have-
for civil actions. Contract is 6 years, land is 12 years.
Well,
Beautiful.
Judgment's 12 years.
Well, like
Beautiful.
you mentioned, it is a civil case, so that's why.
It's
So
not a
maybe
civil
perhaps
No,
for
No,
this
this
no,
was
no,
a
she
civil
filed
case.
a civil
civil
case.
action.
Civil
So
action.
perhaps for this one, that's why there's a statute of limitation. Maybe, like you mentioned, she ought to have gone to.
No, there's not a statute of limitation civil case. It's the burden of proof. It would have been easier if you had been convicted on a criminal case.
Okay.
But the point we're making is that there's no statute of limitation for criminal cases.
Cases.
Take the
That's
Cosby
very
issue, for instance. He went down on one person's, even though there were
Because it
multiple
happened
women,
within the statute.
but it was just one lady's incident that happened within the statute of
Thank you.
limitation.
So just to break it down, if she had been able to provide proof, enough proof, then there's no statute of limitation on the case.
Yes.
Thank you.
If she
Anything else?
passed, it would have gone down.
Please, to break it down for everybody, statute of limitations, the law that sets the maximum time that parties involved have to initiate legal proceedings from the dates of an alleged offense, whether civil or criminal. However, cases involving serious crimes like murder typically have no maximum period.
What do you have
So-
to say though? So I need to ask this question because there was a big debate on,
Yeah.
on online yesterday. What do you have to say about the judge's judgment? If I put it that way, saying that she should pay damages, talked about it being sentimental, throwing it out of court, and how it would affect the people coming out to speak about cases like this, whether true or false. I mean, particularly true, not false. Sorry.
Yeah. So look, I'm no lawyer, but I don't think the judge should have gone as far as saying that the case was, in a sense, saying it was frivolous.
Yes.
And awarding damages. Probably should have looked at the evidence that was present. Now, this happened a long time ago. The longer that is taken for things to happen, and we don't have rape kits or tests.
Yeah.
If evidence was taken at the time it happened, if she had reported, for instance, evidence would be fresh. However, there are a multitude of, let's look at this as a campaign. There's a multitude of other people who've made these allegations. Their issues are probably more recent, and the likelihood of obtaining a conviction if guilty is probably higher. That's what they should honestly they should look at. Just like Bovi put out, go and look at Bovi's tweets. Time is coming.
No, we need to move on.
All right, let's move on. Thank you so much. But I think we've broken down this story properly. Thank you.
Dr. I sent in a message. She said, initially, he reacted to the National Assembly story. He said the National Assembly is trying to make Saraki and Co. the best National Assembly in recent times. I hope Nigerians are learning now. They've not opened National Assembly, but are closing the session. Sad. He also adds on this most recent story. On Busola's suit, it was ill-advised, but I urge all past and present victims not to be discouraged. The main takeaway is that we need a better system for proving rape and sexual assaults, e.g. Rape kits, sexual assaults departments and experts, medics and law officers. Also, more support groups. I urge women to keep their voices raised as well.
All right. Thank you, Dr. I.
I'll come to you today for your analysis on this story from this day newspaper. Global polls, signals from Kogi Bios are disturbing Jonathan once. They were speaking in Port Harcourt, River State, during the presentation of the book authored by former Deputy Governor of the States, Sir Gabriel Toby. And in his statements that he was making, he actually mentioned the coming elections, governorship elections in Bayelsa, Kogi, and that's Bayelsa, Kogi, and one other state like that. Well, he actually specifically for Bayelsa State saying that if electronic voting is not put in place, that it would just leave an open ground for violence to reoccur.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping you state the book, the title of the book that we're reading. It's called In the Course of Service. The memo of it's a former governor's memo. That's in the course of service, something that we don't really find synonymous with that.
Sounds like
politics.
war films, so.
Anyway, so this is Jonathan, and we know that our past president, our immediate past president, doesn't talk. He's talking a lot more recently, but he generally doesn't talk. And I guess this is because it involves Bayelsa. So obviously it's something that will be dear to his heart. There are upcoming elections in Kogi and Bayelsa, and they've been in a number of allegations. He's focusing on all the thuggery that happens leading up to elections, in and around elections. The other theory stating, and I don't know if other people saw leaked communiques indicating, setting, but in essence, insinuating that the ruling party is planning to use state structures to rig the elections by withdrawing, certain police officers and only putting in, officers that they believe would do their bidding. So there are a bunch of things, but Jonathan is focusing on how we conduct elections generally, and that the proper use of electronic voting will reduce thuggery. Now there is some debate, or there's some merit to that, perhaps, that when people know that what happens if we use. You can debate as to how successful it will be or not, in reducing thuggery. It depends on the type of electronic voting that we have to do. If people still need to go to a polling unit, they can still be influenced unduly. It's not about whether it's on paper or not. It might be harder to conceal, but in the end, it doesn't change the thuggery. We need to change the attitude around politics. It's not do or die, and it starts from the leadership. Some of the statements that have been said, by politicians over the years, the attitudes towards, conducting elections. We in Africa generally, politics is take out the opponent even before I get to the poll, and then see whatever it is that I can do to rig and influence what happens at the poll.
You have ATMs around. Right? I'm using ATMs as an analogy to how easy is it to reduce the human factor or human influence on
It's just
around
let's start with a few statistics.
You have ATMs around. You don't necessarily have to have security guards every time somebody goes to make a withdrawal, right?
Let's start with a few statistics. And people can correct me. I can't recall the exact numbers, but we probably have maybe about 50 million people who are eligible to vote. Then we have, how many people do we have on the voters register? I think
20.
about 20 to almost 30 million people. How many ATMs do we have in the country, for instance? Last I checked, it was below 20,000 anyway, well below 20,000. I think in the 18,000 range. When we don't have enough ATMs to even satisfy cash. I get the point that the electronic touch points, and Jonathan mentions, it says we transfer billions electronically for money. But it's a small subset. I mean, the CBN's drive to get more people included. There's so many other things.
And do you think because the stakes are higher when it comes to politics?
Yes, clearly the stakes are way higher when it comes to politics. And you're absolutely right. I think our biggest bet is mobile. Right, that is a lot more widely available.
You can vote from wherever you are.
It's ubiquitous. You're supposed to register and know the individuals who have it. That's the biggest change. Now the issue would then be around that, and we need to design the laws to fit that. So we won't have issues of the INEC saying, no, there was a central server. No, there's no central server.
Because if we have already, the internet has developed to a point where you have encrypted services everywhere. If you have two-factor authentication,
elections, there's so many other things. And not to be technical, there are many ways.
We'll have to
Do we
round
get
up.
to move on? Yeah.
Yes, we need to move on. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next one. Mr. C, you want to say something, so touch on this story. We uncovered budget padding in ministries, departments, agencies, says the chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, Professor Bolaji Owasanoye. He said budget padding was still prevalent in Nigeria, stressing that many government agencies take more money than they need to pay salaries. Does that come as a surprise to you?
Not at all.
Okay, take us through the story,
So
please.
he's merely confirming what we've always known has transpired over the years. When it comes to budget preparation season, the ministries, the departments, and the agencies pad their budgets with monies they know that they will not use during the budget year. The whole idea being that you collect more money than you need, and then you try to sift or move out the excess through the back door. And going through the story, he says that they prevented a sum of 9.2 billion naira from leaving the system. And then they also arrested 59 directors of a government agency for trying to move 3 billion through the bank accounts. Okay, you've arrested them. What's next? Are they being prosecuted? He then goes on to say that with regards to politicians who collect money for their constituency projects and either don't do them or do not justify the amounts that were released to them, that the agency prefers to recover the sums from the politicians rather than go through expensive and time-wasting prosecutions. On that, I disagree. If people have committed crimes and you're unwilling to prosecute them, you're then sending the wrong signal to the next set of people that will come into these offices. The story is an indictment of the budget screening exercise that goes on at the National Assembly. Because if they were performing their oversight responsibilities properly, they would detect instances of budget padding. But in most cases, they're part of the process because they also smuggle in their own projects, and they make all sorts of unreasonable demands on the ministries and the agencies when they come for budget defenses. On Thursday, the House of Reps approved the transfer of 100 million from the Personnel Fund of the National Assembly Commission to cover capital and budgetary expenses on the ground that the people who were meant to have earned the 100 million naira had not yet been appointed. It speaks to the dire situation we're in.
Thank you very much, Mr. C.
Here's a message from Hassan Taiwo. He sent this one all the way from Abeokuta. Thank you very much for listening. He said the issue of genotype testing is not about morality, but reality of preventive medicine. If Mr. Nwaji has ever experienced the burden of caring for sickle cell patients, he won't be this strong about the issue. What's the right of the innocent child who goes through the pains or pangs of the pain, the psychological and physiological implications or complications that come with it? It's not just about two consenting adults, but the child who also has a right to life without the burden of sickle cell disease. How many would intentionally expose themselves to the risk of being infected to HIV?
First and foremost, you don't know me to know who I've cared for and not cared for, and who's in my family and not in my family. That's number one. Number two, I'm sorry, the logic of that statement makes no sense. The point is that the government has no right to extend oversight towards mandating people to have genotype testing. It doesn't remove the fact that people need to have sensitive information with regards to understanding the implications of this. That's all we're saying.
All right. Okay, let's move on to our next story. Nigerian government, Waji, I'll come to you. Nigerian government orders the activation of automatic voicemail on existing phone lines. Premium Times has this story.
Okay, I mean, it's crazy that we've waited. How long have we had GSM in Nigeria now? This is 19 years now, 18 years?
Yeah, about close to 20 years.
Close to 20 years, and we are now just getting to this point. And the thing is, people have been complaining about this automatic voicemail thing for a very long time. And what people don't understand is that it's a customer preference. That's literally it. In mobile telecommunications, it is a customer preference. Some people just don't want to have voicemail. They don't want people leaving messages on their phone. It's your right. You pay for that device. You should have the access to opt in or opt out. It should not be something that should be mandated on you. And I remember many years ago, at a particular conference that the NCC held, people were challenging them that why do I have voicemail on my phone? That why is that something that I should be subsumed towards?
If I'm not mistaken, it's still a paid service.
Yes,
exactly. But it's automatic on your phone.
No.
That's the point. So,
Do you
so
know
I
I
don't.
didn't?
I think for me, it's I'm happy that they're now finally getting to this point. But what I just never what is confusing me is why it's taking this long.
So I didn't
Yeah.
realize that it was compulsory. I have voicemail service, even personalized.
No, it's not
on my
compulsory.
phone.
You can opt out. So what I'm saying is
I
that
tried to, that's
Okay, you
fine.
tried
I
to.
tried to opt out. There was
And they
no
keep putting
option
you
to
back
opt
in.
out.
Wow.
There was no option. I was thinking this is such a burden because the only thing I hear on my voicemail is hello.
Can you
People,
imagine?
Nigerians are not even familiar
They're not
with
used
Not
to
using
it.
familiar,
it.
yeah. And then it's now paid service because you have
Mhm.
because when you start listening to it, it's now deducting from your head.
I didn't even know that.
Well,
Okay.
So I'm happy that it's you know what you call it.
Yeah.
It's now been done. It's the right thing to do. It's just a shame that it's taking this long.
Well,
Thank
since you're speaking, I mean, would you say we're ripe for partnership with global tech giants, as Vice President alludes to?
Are you teasing into the
Yeah.
next story? We've been right,
Chukwuma is in
Valentine.
town.
20 years down the line.
Yeah, we've
after
been,
starting
but
the
you
use
see,
of GSM.
he's more or less stating the obvious. YouTube came out with a report last week that indicated that Nigerians have figured out the algorithms of how to use social media, in the sense that we understand it better than anybody else with regards to the timing of our posts, understanding the kind of images and content that we post on social media that has now directly related to the generation of revenues for individuals who happen to belong to a particular category of generations and people who use social media. So this is not news. Nigerians have been blowing up on social media for decades. There's something, I mean, it's so funny that something happens in Lagos, it gets posted. It gets to my friends in California who are not Nigerian, and they send it to me.
And then major blogs in Los Angeles repost it within hours.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
no, this is my point. My friends now send it to me. Oh, like, why did you see what's going on in Lagos? I'm like, really, dude? Like, I'm here. So my point being is that this is not news. So when he says, fine, we're ripe for it. I know these are just sound bites that he has to adhere to because you know your Alibabas are in town, the guy from Twitter's in town, and everything else. But I think what alluded to in the article is that what you need to focus on is making sure you have an enabling environment to continue to foster innovation, to continue to foster creativity, to continue to foster financial inclusion, so you can bring more young individuals in Nigeria onto this platform. Like Tunde said, Tunde reeled out a fantastic statistic when he talked about who's eligible to vote in Nigeria, and it's only 15 million people out of 180 million people. What does that tell you with regards to eligibility? It tells you that majority of Nigerians are under the age of 18. So that's where you have to now
That's our
begin.
median age.
Exactly. That's where you have to now begin to invest, and you have to now begin to have focus and strategies and all sorts of ideas towards, and that's where tech is playing. And what's crazy is that these people are leaving the government behind. So the government needs to step in to make sure things are properly regulated and create an enabling environment. So take it beyond sound bites. Let's make it action.
If they know the statistics, if they're aware, they try to understand at least halfway through these explanations that you just given, based on the demographic now that is accepting technology and driving economic developments and everything. Would you see them reconsidering the efforts or the whatever that they're planning to put in place for taxing e-commerce, for instance, stifling social media, free speech, and things like
It's
that?
back to political will. And it's back to political will, which is based on some level of enlightenment. And unfortunately, a lot of people in government have neither.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, on budget padding, IK from LASU says it's only a subset of the whole. Many more are yet undisclosed. The country is technically milked dry, and suddenly everybody is camping around creating money from where it never should be.
Absolutely,
POS charges and so on.
Yeah.
All right. Tunde, let me come to you for this story. This the newspaper reports that Nigeria, Benin, Niger, they've established a joint anti-smuggling committee. The reason we know that the borders are still closed until the 31st of January, but seeing that the efforts being made possibly bringing in results, what do you see this new establishment of the committee, whatever, is going to foment for us going forward?
Possibly bring in results. Well, I'm not entirely. I can see the results that it's bringing in. There's been attendant increase in number of items, scarcity in other items. I don't know if it's chicken is scarce, for instance, and we're coming up towards the end of the year. Maybe this would teach us to do Christmas without chicken. And rice and jollof rice will be valued entirely differently. But it can't be. But I mean, we only need to look at the inflation in some of these items. Many times, a lot of the time, I think we put the cart before the horse. Certain things are not in place. So tightening your borders makes sense, right? And this has come as a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction, because they feel that certain policies are not being adhered to. They had banned the importation of rice for a while, but the question is, do we have the capacity? So all of this border closure is centered on rice, and they're saying it's generally because we also have illegal and illicit, items flowing through the border. It's a generally good idea. But what has been the fallout? The customs guys love it. One, because they're making extra money at the border. A colleague of mine went to Benin over the weekend, and there are multiple stops, and at each stop, these guys are collecting 2K, right? And that's just one example. Scarcity creates corruption. So and we've added to the scarcity. That's part of our problem. We've added to the scarcity, so we're creating more opportunities. Let me use an analogy. When you're trying to treat cancer, the cancer of smuggling, right? If we're to look at that way, and how it's stifling our local economy, because of the way it is, it's difficult to target, i.e. cancer. When people apply therapies like chemotherapy, for instance, it'll kill good and bad, right? So you'd only apply it in short periods and bursts, and then measure the results. Are we doing any of that? When I say it's killing the good and the bad, it is killing good commerce as well.
Yes.
And let's not forget, goods coming into your country, it's like you can bring it down to one person buying from another. You have a customer. Now, if you have someone who you buy items from, and you can no longer buy from that person, what do? You look for someone else.
Yeah.
Right? What will happen?
You're going far, bro.
What will happen is that the neighbors that we trade with will look elsewhere, right? And if they get used to looking elsewhere, they won't come back, and it'll be harder to bring them back. So you're trying to kill the bad, but you're killing the good as well. And are we measuring the outcome and the success of this thing that we're doing? Or we're just happy that it looks like we're doing something?
Because for each marketing decision they make, they have systems that are set in place to make that work. And you're absolutely right. Ayo Quadri just added his comment to buttress what you just said. He said, I say again that closing the Nigerian borders is akin to blocking the misfunctioning or malfunctioning or leaking pores of your skin because you don't want to lose fluid.
Exactly.
However, you must lose fluid and gain fluid for air and others to exist. Nigeria cannot exist in isolation, and closing the borders is not the right solution. Not good economics, he says. Solve the problem with the leakage, i.e. customs officers feeding fat and smugglers, and not replace one problem with another. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which connects us with this next story. Next story from Daily Times, Mr. C. Representatives, Operation Positive Identification. Say, go ahead. Nigerian Army is aiming at smoking out fleeing terrorists in the country through this.
Yes, so quick one. When Nigerian Army announced Operation Positive Identification, there was a huge public backlash against the exercise. And the House of Reps was compelled to meet with the Army authorities to sit down and strategize on how to implement this new exercise. So they've adopted some recommendations, and quickly I'll run through them. One, a joint intelligence and monitoring team will be set up to checkmate any possible excesses. Through that, the Nigerian Army is to regularly brief the House of Reps on this exercise as it's being conducted. And in areas where they have successfully completed the exercise, they are mandated to hand over to the Nigerian Police Force to continue from where they stopped. And they've also been directed to liaise with other security agencies. Now, it's imperative that this exercise be allowed to go on because successes have been recorded. Boko Haram commanders have been picked up in different parts of the country as they're fleeing the northeast corridor where the operations are going on. But Nigerian Army should also remember their extant laws and regulations, and they should comply with them.
Thank you, Mr. C. That sounds nice and dandy, but still ambiguous. Where does the Nigerian Army stop, and where does the Nigerian Police step in? So at what point would we know that, this is a clear mark, Nigerian Army, have they finished their job with a certain individual or certain people, and they hand them over to the police?
Yeah, so the thing with Nigerian agencies and transparency is the criteria is known only to them, and we will only know physically when they hand over to the police.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. C, and thanks to our analysts for today, Tunde Okufi and Mr. Nwaji. Nwaji is at the Corporate MC on Twitter. Mr. C is at Mr. C on Twitter, and Tunde is at Bcoops on Twitter. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Don't forget, if you still want to continue talking about the headlines, you can go onto our Twitter handle at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981, and we continue there. Next up, we have the Locker Room 981, where we talk sports with Tega Supreme.
Thank you,